Okay, it's Thursday night. I believe it's the 29th of August. What you're seeing here is a jumbo version of course, the Dumbbell Nebula and Messier 27. The reason it's a jumbo version is because basically I removed the 0.5 Barlow, doubling the magnification of the scope, with the idea that, since we've been exploring the highest possible settings for the REV II system, we might as well take some time and see what effect high magnifications will have on many of the deep sky studies that we looked at last night, beginning with NGC 6900. Frankly, I'm kind of impressed with how the Dumbbell Nebula looks. It is spectacular with color and scale. However, one of the problems we're going to run into is the field of view is now very small, something like 7 by 10 arc minutes. Meanwhile, we're going to be thinning out the luminosity of studies to the point where we probably won't see much beyond 15th magnitude galaxies. But that's what we want to test for tonight. I'm going to go ahead first and align the dumbbell so it's a little better view, and then we're going to review it again, and then we're going to launch in to many of the same studies we looked at last night. I may have to increase the screen intensity for luminosity because now we've darkened up the background sky. Now that'll be an advantage because it'll give a little better contrast. Darkening up the background sky will give a little better contrast to whatever we're looking at, as well as scale, but it'll also thin out the luminosity. So let me go ahead and see if I can synchronize the scope to the Dumbbell Nebula Messier 27 before we launch into NGC 6900. Let's have a look now as Messier 27, now centered in the field of view, is allowed to form on the screen at 256 flood, 44.2 decibels of auto gain control at 150x. Now keep in mind the nebula itself is about 8, says it's 8 arc minutes across, and if we were to estimate how far across the screen is, I would say it's probably somewhere like 12 arc minutes laterally, and rotating this around, probably around maybe 8 or 10 arc minutes in size. My original estimates were done based on the moon with the 0.5 Barlow installed. I am really impressed with the color and the brightness of the nebula. And we are losing it is thinning out a little bit in terms of its football shape, but boy, there's some nice magnification of texture and features in the dumbbell. So, let me give you the data on Messier 27, simply because this is such a great view and it's nice to be able to capture the data. Planetary nebula in Vulpecula, the Fox, magnitude 7.3, 8 by 5.6 arc minutes, 1,300 light years distant. Right ascension 1959.36, declination 22.43.16. We are viewing it without the half-power Barlow, roughly 150x, and we're seeing it at the maximum settings of the REV II imaging system, 256 flood and 44.8 decibels gain in color, as you can well tell. Let's move on to NGC 6900. Hopefully it'll end up somewhere on the screen. Okay, we've just stabilized maybe 2 or 3 seconds ago. I want to get a sense of how long it's going to take for the image to formulate on the screen fully. At 256 flood, it should take about a minute. You can see the ghostly remnants of the Dumbbell Nebula dissolving. And that basically means that there's residual imagery still in the CCD sensor pixels. And it'll take a while to erase because it does do 6 passes of 5 seconds each, and it retains some of the image and does image stabilization. So the key now will be whether or not the stars will be round enough that we can distinguish any galactic profiles from the field of view. And that could be very problematic because at such high magnifications I can easily end up displacing the image and have it constantly be seeking to try to reestablish it, smearing the light of the galaxy around the field, when the key is that the only way we can tell it's a galaxy is because there will be a luminosity smear. So let me give you the data on GC 6900. NGC 6900, a galaxy in Aquila, magnitude 14, 1 by 0.8 arc minutes. It's a spiral with a lowercase b, twice removed from lenticular, 230 million light years distant. We're at right ascension 20, 21, 35, declination minus 2 degrees, 34 minutes, and 12 seconds. I do believe the galaxy is present right about there on the screen. Things will be hopping around quite a bit tonight because we're at twice the magnification, doubling any error in the go-to functionality. But if indeed that is a 14th magnitude galaxy that we're seeing there, we are actually making out some sense of displacement that I ordinarily would not expect in a 14th magnitude galaxy. However, we are operating at twice the exposure time of 5 seconds times 6 passes, and we've probably added maybe 0.3 magnitudes due to the fact that we're operating at a slightly more higher sensitivity, 44.8 decibels gain, which basically will add 1 magnitude over that of what we would have gotten if we had operated the standard that I normally use, 128 flood and 42 decibels. I think that's a pretty good view right there at 150x. NGC 6901 should be appearing on the screen, and I do believe it is, in pretty much the same position as 6900. Thankfully, it's a galaxy in Aquila, magnitude 13.7. Basically almost a 3-to-1 aspect ratio sub-oblate near edge-on galaxy in terms of aspect ratio, 1.1 by 0.4 arc minutes. Spiral with a bar, lowercase ab, 216 million light years distant. Right ascension 20, 22, 21, declination +6, 25, 47. We've basically adjusted by going 8 degrees north of NGC 6900, since all NGCs are basically set up on right ascension. Depending upon the assignment of a number depends on how far each study is east of what was once, I believe, December 21st, the winter solstice acting as 0 hour. That's a very nice view, I think, of this 13.7 magnitude galaxy. Moving on. Okay, if you viewed last night's and the nights before videos, you would have recognized this particular galaxy here because it has a neighboring bright star. Here we've managed to double the separation between them. That galaxy is NGC 6903 at Capricorn, magnitude 11.9, almost face on, 2.6 by 2.4 arc minutes. It's a lenticular spiral with a bar 148 million light years distant. Right ascension 2023, 44, but we've gone much further south by about 20 degrees in our last study, 6902, to minus 19, 1931. One of the nice things about higher magnification, as I may have mentioned earlier, is that the background sky will have darkened, giving a little bit more contrast between the study and the field of view.
Wake me in the morning.
I have been looking forward to seeing this next study, NGC 6905, at twice the magnification because it had a fairly condensed light. It's a planetary nebula in Delphinus, the dolphin. Magnitude 12, 44 by 38 arc seconds in size. So looking at that, if indeed we are seeing the frontier, you can get an idea about what 1 arc minute of screen size would appear. The central star in this planetary nebula in Delphinus is magnitude 14. It's 5,700 light years distant. We're at right ascension 2022-23, declination 2006-16. The presence on the screen is superb, and doubling the magnification has really helped on this one. We're also getting a bit more color since I adjusted the color density up using the REV II imaging software itself. So that's a very fine view, and I am so far quite impressed with both the accuracy of Go 2, which has drifted no more than, let's say, 2 fingers here, as well as the depth of brightness we're getting. However, we have yet to push the limits. So let's move on. I've been rather disappointed with the views of NGC 6906 seen on the screen. It's a galaxy in Aquila. Magnitude 12.3, 2-to-1 aspect ratio, 1.6 to 0.8. It really doesn't have that much presence on the screen, although it's quite visible. It's a spiral with a bar in lowercase bc, 219 million light years distant, right ascension 2023-33, declination +6, 26-37. Looking at the view we're getting, I would say this is probably misstated. Somebody must have fumble-fingered the magnitude. I'll have to check it out. I would say it looks more like a 14th magnitude galaxy than a 12th magnitude galaxy, especially given that aspect ratio of 2-to-1, 1.6 by 0.8 arc minutes. We are getting a good view, but not what I would expect from a 12.3 magnitude galaxy. In terms of last night's studies, NGC 6907, Galaxy in Capricorn, was one of the better views in terms of seeing structure. This is a magnitude 11.2, 3.4 by 2.6 arc minute sized galaxy. Spiral with a bar, lowercase bc, 141 million light years distant. Now, we are seeing quite a bit of swirling in the galaxy. Maybe not quite as well delineated as it was last night, but certainly pretty respectable in terms of the amount of detail or texture or at least morphology we're seeing. NGC 6907 is at right ascension 2025-06, but what's really impressive about it is it's at minus 24 degrees 48 minutes and 31 seconds. So I would say it's not much more than 20 degrees above the southern horizon. Fortunately, it's very close to culminating at this point, and we have a very decent night sky. There are also probably several other galaxies also visible on the screen, which would require some research to track down. But there's our view of NGC 6907. Neighboring NGC 6907 in Capricorn is another galaxy. Now I would be blown away to detect this galaxy. It's magnitude 15.5. I've assumed that when we double the magnification that we will lose about a magnitude 1.5. I figured the faintest galaxies we would see at twice the magnification would be probably somewhere around magnitude 15. However, we are getting a pretty good view. Now remember, the ghost of NGC 6907 is still on the screen. NGC 6908, another galaxy, of course, in Capricorn, as 6907, is magnitude 15.5, but smallish, 0.5 by 0.3 arc minutes. But remember, we are, in fact, doubling the magnification. The galaxy is considered peculiar, and the reason it's a peculiar is it's somehow bound gravitationally to the larger NGC 6907. It also is 145 million light years distant. Right ascension 202508, declination minus 244803. Given the deep south viewing location and the magnitude of 15.5, I'm beginning to think that I need to do more higher magnification views of deep sky studies, including galaxies. Wow, look at 6907 has this spiral arm just wrapping right around, and the other one is almost entangling 6908. Looks reminiscent of, I believe it's anyway, I'll have to remember what Messier galaxy it is, but very nice. And there are a couple of other galaxies located here, and possibly one entangled with that star in the field of view. As the previous galaxy ghost disappears from the screen, I want to point out that I have been skipping over anything other than galaxies of interest compared to some of the clusters that I called up last night. It's just not worth looking at stars at such a high magnification. Now what we're seeing here is NGC 6912, another galaxy in Capricornus. It's magnitude 13.1, 1.4 by 1.1 arc minute. Spiral with a bar and a lowercase c, so 3 times removed from lenticular. This particular galaxy is 318 million light years distant, which puts it at about 120 to 130,000 light years in diameter. I do believe this is the ghost of the previous galaxy pair, and there are several galaxies on the screen. This is probably the brighter one, NGC 6912, but there's no guarantee. I had to spend a lot of time this morning recovering from some errors in attribution I made last night. It was well worth it, though. I did a great deal of research. The Sky Live was very helpful in that regard. So anyway, NGC 6912 at magnitude 13.1 is probably this galaxy here, but there are others on the field of view. I'm going to let it develop a little bit, though. That may be sticking around. If it is, that's in the right location. Still there. That's probably our baby. NGC 6915 is a galaxy in Aquila. Magnitude 13.1, football shape, 1.5 by 0.9, actually almost oblate, aspect ratio. Spiral with a lowercase ab, 256 million light years distant, puts it about 120,000 light years in diameter. The galaxy is pretty clearly this one right here. It's at right ascension 20, 27, 46, declination -3 degrees, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. It is really popping. As I said, I am actually being impressed. Now, the question will become whether the aesthetics of the views at 150x will not be seriously degraded by operating at such a high magnification. But in terms of galactic views, wow, I am so surprised that we have really getting much more of the galaxies visible. As I said, part of it is the sky is darkened a little bit by magnification. The other part is I've boosted up another magnitude by going to the maximum set points, or the REV II. It may be just the right combination. We won't know until we get to NGC 69, 27, and 27A, because if we can pull off a 16.5 magnitude galaxy, I think we'll be dancing. Well, as the ghost of the previous galaxy is erased from the screen, we're now heading into Delphinus for NGC 6917, a galaxy. Magnitude 14.5, 1.4 by 1 arc minute, spiral with peculiarities. 214 million light years distant. Right ascension 20, 27, 28, declination +8 degrees, 5 minutes and 51 seconds. We are in the sky's middle third. We should get the darkest background sky possible. I would say, looking up at the screen at an odd angle, our galaxy is right about there. Remember, because we're double the magnification, we double the error and go 2, especially as we swing north and south. So there is our view, and I will, we got a galaxy in Microscopia, we got a galaxy in Vulpecula. Let's go there next. NGC 6921 is a galaxy in the Fox Vulpecula, magnitude 13.4. Should be a nice edge on 0.9 by 0.2 arc minutes, and since we are operating at 150x, we should get a fairly expansive view of the galaxy, and you can see it right there. It's a spiral with a lowercase a, 195 million light years distant, right ascension 20, 28, 28, and declination +25, 43, 24. A very fine part of the sky. I do not have a very good view of it. I will have to appreciate it on the mañana when I get a chance to pull together the video of tonight's real-time imaging. Our next galaxy will be in Aquila. I think we've given enough time for 6921 to fully reinforce itself on the screen. I do believe NGC 6921 is dissolving here, and NGC 6922 is forming right here on the screen. NGC 6922 is a galaxy in Aquila, magnitude 13.5, 1.3 by 1 arc minute, spiral with a lowercase c, 255 million light years distant. It's at right ascension 20, 29, 52, declination -2, 11, 28. I do want to point out that I have seen a number of slow walkers when we start getting next to the celestial equator. Most of them have been about -5 degrees in declination. I can't tell you whether or not if repositioning satellite or a high-flying aircraft has moved across the field. I assume that if it can appear on this screen for an extended period of time, and they have for like 20 to 50 seconds in the past, that they probably are satellites, and if they leave a trail, then they're not a trail not of defined luminosity, but a trail of variable texture, smokishness. They probably are under propulsion. Anyway, that's our view of NGC 6922, 13.5 magnitude galaxy in Aquila. NGC 6926 is another galaxy in the Eagle Aquila. Brighter, magnitude 12.4, larger 2 by 1.4 arc minutes. It's a spiral with a bar of the lowercase c morphology, but it has peculiarities. The galaxy is 268 million light years distant, which means it's probably somewhere, as I estimated previously, about 170,000 light years in diameter. You can see it spreading itself across the field very nicely. Even though it's a football shaped in terms of the specification, it would definitely appear that that bar is quite extensive since it looks kind of edgy on. It's at right ascension 203306 and declination minus 20141. We're getting quite a nice view on the screen. Now we're going to move on to the subject of a good deal of exploration in last night's video. It is the NGC 6927 series of galaxies. 27, 27A, 28, and 30 are all lie within the same field of view. However, the field of view will be more expansive tonight simply because we're operating at twice the magnification. Let's begin with NGC 6927, galaxy in Delphinus, magnitude 14.5, but quite small, 0.5 by 0.2 arc minutes. Given the fact that we've now doubled the magnification, there will be some diminution or dilution of light, but it should look more like a 1 by 0.4 arc minute sized galaxy. Last night, all we saw of it was the core, and the core was fairly faint. In fact, the core was about as faint as a smaller NGC 6927A, which was at magnitude 16.5. The real test of tonight is to see whether or not we can make out that 16.5 magnitude galaxy. Meanwhile, there is a brighter, edgier on galaxy which should be on the screen, and does appear on the screen, which is NGC 6928. The three galaxies should sweep like a loop like this. So the brighter 6928 looping down through the 14.5 magnitude 27, and then it loops around like a bow to the 16th magnitude galaxy. And I do believe all three of them are present on the screen at this point. So, once again, this is NGC 6927, magnitude 14.5, but smallish at 0.5 by 0.2 arc minutes, a lenticular spiral, 201 million light years distant, right ascension 203238, declination plus 9 degrees, 54 minutes, and 58 seconds. And I do believe I've given it enough to make its presence visible on the screen. All right, here we have our acid test. NGC 6927A appeared in its core smaller but slightly brighter than NGC 6927. Despite 27's being magnitude 14.5, NGC 6927A had the highest average surface brightness per arc second. I think it was something like 22.1 magnitudes. Of all the galaxies that we basically did research on last evening to pull together kind of like a picture or characterizing this group of galaxies, I think there are, I can't quite remember now, it's specifying here 193 million light years, but other research may have a slightly different number. But what we're looking for here is NGC 6927A, galaxy in Delphinus, like 27, but it's magnitude 16.5 and smaller, 0.3 by 0.1 arc minutes. It's an elliptical class 6, 193 million light years distant. The galaxy is going to be around 30 to 35,000 light years in diameter. Kind of small, but remember it's an elliptical, which means a lot of its cold dark matter has been converted to stars, and the gravitational binding forces are stronger, and therefore the galaxy is collapsing in on itself. We're at right ascension 20, 32, 36, declination 9 degrees, 52 minutes, and 58 seconds. So we're about ready to go on to NGC 6928, which is the brightest overall and largest of the galaxies in the NGC 6928 galaxy group. Easily seen near the middle of the screen is NGC 6928, the largest and brightest galaxy in the NGC 6928 galaxy group, which I confirmed is a group, and most of the galaxies are within 4 or 5 million light years of each other. However, NGC 6928 in Delphinus is considered to be 213 million light years distant, which was not the number I came up with today in doing this research. The galaxy is magnitude 12.2. It's 2.1 by 0.6 arc minutes, which is a very nice, close to purely edge-on spiral galaxy with a bar, lowercase ab. It's at right ascension 20, 32, 50, declination 9 degrees, 55 minutes, 37 seconds. I'm going to give it a little longer since we're operating at 256 flood to composite all of its photons as best as possible. And I'm going to skip ahead and give you some data on the next galaxy. Oh, here's one in Aquila, but we're not going there. We're not going to 6929 because we want to stay with this galaxy group. That will be 6930. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the camera and make the leap to 6930, which I believe is in this region of the screen already. We'll see how it lines up. Whereas NGC 6928 was rather vertical in its alignment, NGC 6930 should appear more horizontal. Not only that, it is entangled with a non-NGC galaxy to the left part of its spiralicity. I do not have the designation on that handy. But anyway, I believe it's around a 16.5 magnitude galaxy. So what you might be looking for on the screen is a little brightening to the left side of NGC 6930, galaxy in Delphinus, brightish, magnitude 12.8, 1.2 by 0.5 arc minutes, spiral with a bar, lowercase ab, 212 million light years distant. It's at right ascension 20, 32, 58, and declination plus 9 degrees, 52 minutes, 27 seconds. You can also obviously make out NGC 6928, where I've just pointed on the screen. That is a nice view, and what I'm going to do is allow this to run a little while longer, and I'm going to skip through and look for our next study adventitiously, because now I've covered all the studies I did last night, beginning at 6900, going to 6930, but I did skip over some open clusters in that domain. There is a 14th magnitude galaxy in Capricorn, 1 by 0.4 arc minutes, 6931. Let's go ahead and skip that. A star in Delphinus, 6933. A globular cluster in Delphinus. This should be a study. It's 7 arc minutes in size with stars of magnitude 13.8. I do believe we should have a look at that. Well, as you can tell, globular clusters at high magnifications, especially if they're particularly dense, and this one isn't, kind of look like a congestion of stars. We are seeing some resolution, but the magnification's a bit too high to give us good views, tight views of its stellar components that are resolved. So maybe we want to stay away from globular clusters at 256 flood at 150x. NGC 6934 at magnitude 8.9 is 7 arc minutes in size. Its brightest stars are magnitude 13.8. It is a class 8, which means its brightest stars, if you do the math on this, 9 minus subtracted from 13.8 gives you about almost 5 magnitude delta, and that makes sense for a class 8 globular cluster. However, this cluster is 50,000 light years distant, so impressive. We are looking pretty much along the axis of the Milky Way, maybe 10 or 15 degrees off the central axis. And we are seeing this globular cluster, I would say, on the far side of the Milky Way galaxy. So once again, probably just too long an exposure time to get a good look, a nice resolved look at a globular cluster. Okay, this will be our last galaxy of the evening, and I selected it because it's largish, but not particularly bright. It's NGC 6978, a galaxy in Aquarius. Its magnitude 13.3, 2-to-1 aspect ratio, 1.5 by 0.7 arc minutes, spiral with a lowercase b, 272 million light years distant. We're at right ascension 2052.35, declination minus 542.40. I'm going to allow the galaxy to form on the screen. Now, one thing I want to say tonight, I am seriously impressed by how deep we've gone at 150x. When you double the magnification, you basically lose about 1.5 magnitudes in reach, although you get some image scale, so things look fainter. But it seems to have been better tonight than I have experienced in the past in terms of image quality. So I'm going to have to scratch my head over that, but if we really are seeing magnitude 16.5 galaxies, and we have, by the way, we're adding one magnitude by just maxing out the settings on the REV II, it may be a pretty good formula for getting some image scale on interesting galaxies until we get back into the NGC catalog series next year. So I may be spending some good amount of time using these higher magnifications for that reason. So anyway, we're looking at NGC 6978, a galaxy in Aquarius, magnitude 13.3, 1.5 by 0.7 arc minutes, spiral with a lowercase b, 272 million light years distant, so about 125,000 light years in diameter. We're at right ascension 2052.35, declination minus 542.40. We need something to go out on. I don't think the Crescent Nebula is going to do it due to the image scale. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Carpe Noctem on this, but I will continue to search through the handset but for one last view of the evening of note. Okay, I had to travel a lot of NGC mileage to get to NGC 7013, a galaxy in Cygnus. Bright, magnitude 11.3, large, 4.4 by 1.4 arc minutes. It's a suboblate spiral with a lowercase a mere 35 million light years distant, which basically puts it at somewhere around 30,000 light years in diameter. However, we should get a good view. It's at right ascension 2103.33, declination plus 29 degrees, 53 minutes and 49 seconds. All right, so given it's 4.5 by 1.4 arc minutes, if I do a little doubling in my head, based on 75x, it would be something like 1.4, 6. We would have to add maybe 2.5 magnitudes to it, so it would have an average surface brightness of around 14, but we doubled the magnification, so it would have an average surface brightness around 15.5. That's within the range of the scope, so we should be seeing some nice detail on this galaxy. NGC 7013, Galaxy in Cygnus, 11.3 magnitude, 4.5 by 1.4 arc minutes, in the sky's middle third, shaping up quite nicely on the screen. Carpe Noctem.